Oh, hey guys, we are reading through The Art of Neighboring by Dave Runyon and Jay Pathak. And we are on chapter 4. I'm hoping to try to move through these chapters a little more quickly here. So I'm going to try to put out more than one a week from here on out. We'll see. It may push us into the winter. That's okay. Still good stuff. Still helpful. Sorry about my hair, by the way. It's kind of sticking out. There we go. This chapter is called The Fear Factor. And like you, I deal with fear even in getting to know my nearest neighbors, people around who live around me or work around me, even at work. So you need to anticipate, you are likely going to need to help people in your group deal with this. And even if they don't explicitly admit, they likely struggle with some deeply held fears, even some very culturally acceptable, normal sort of fears. So, have you ever gotten a cold shoulder from a neighbor when you attempted to connect with them? The reality is that you are not alone in fear. It is probable that your neighbors are also afraid of connecting because they're afraid of the unknown. See, we are bombarded and inundated in our world and in our culture with news. And we all know that a lot of that news is bad news, right? A store, gets robbed in town. Someone gets stabbed downtown. There's this or that, and we learn just by default that everybody who lives around us is probably a murderous thief, right? That's kind of what we begin to almost think or assume. They're going to kidnap our kids and steal all our stuff. But the reality is that is not the case. Not everybody is as worse as they could be in that sense. Someone who lives alone or in isolation we may mistake as being someone to be suspicious of, or someone with different beliefs that we become fearful of because we don't know how to maybe navigate that, or don't really want to. Or maybe there's someone in our neighborhood who seems to never be home. Or maybe there's a family that you can tell there's a lot of drama, or they have strange habits and behaviors that are different than yours. And these things can create fear, or maybe just the fear of a long-term commitment or interaction. As soon as you begin to put yourself out there, you're risking the possibility of making a friend. So there's a lot of these fears that we deal with. First, we need to say some of these fears are not entirely unfounded. You need to be careful, wise, and cautious, and not put your children, your spouse, even your neighbors in stupid situations. But while we need to ask, where might these fears allow you to be wise? That's a good question. We also need to ask, where might your fears lead you to neglect the great commandment as well as the Great Commission? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself, and to make disciples, baptizing, teaching them to do all that Jesus commanded. Where might your fears lead you to neglect those things? People are messy. That's the reality. And people need Jesus. That's the point. God has called us to lean in and to embrace that tension. So in Numbers chapter 13, there are 12 spies being sent in by the Israelites to the promised land, the land that God promised the Israelites that they needed to go and take hold of. So they send these 12 spies. 10 of them come back with a bad report. They're like, hey, there's giants in the land, and they're evil, and they're angry, and they're gonna hurt us, and they're probably gonna attack us. These kind of reports. And two guys disagreed, dissented from that opinion, and their names were Joshua and Caleb. Well, those 10 spies, did they even confront or interact with any of these giants to find out what they even thought of the Israelites? Where were they even getting their information? Well, we do know that God subjected the Israelites to 40 years of wandering in the wilderness because of their fear and thus their resultant disobedience. That's important to consider. Fear changes our perspective and our perception of others and our assumptions about what they are like and what they think. They likely also, interestingly, have misconceptions about you. They also may think you're a murderous thief, kidnapper. And the Israelites, concerning those who lived in the Promised Land, they were exactly wrong. We find out later through Rahab that they were actually afraid of the Israelites. And the question for you and for me, are we going to fear man, in whose nostrils is breath, says one of the prophets, or fear God? That's the question. Will you be the one to break the cycle of fear? That's what the gospel empowers us to do. Listen to this passage. 1 Peter 3:13-16 offers some very good encouragement. Now, who is there to harm you if you are zealous for what is good? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you will be blessed. Have no fear of them, nor be troubled, but in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and respect, having a good conscience, so that when you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. That's a good word for us. 1 Peter 3:13-16. There's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of fear of awkwardness. And awkwardness won't kill you. And the reality is, fear leads to isolation. Fear breeds isolation in communities, and isolation rots a community. That's what happens. What fears about neighbors do you need to confess before God, people in your community group, and confront and begin to step into and change? Thanks, guys. Helpful, hopefully, for you as it is for me. Next video, chapter 5, is called Moving Down the Line. And the question is, how do we begin to take the next steps to get started?